Welcome to another show of Inside Sports Talk. Today with myself, Johanna-Rosalye, my wonderful, amazing co-host, Ed Cole, and PLR. How are you guys?
Good evening, Joe.
What's happening?
So, y'all, thanks for having me.
Our wonderful guest, Keith Pompey, beat writer for Philadelphia 76ers for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me. I feel honored.
We are the honored ones. We're going to go ahead and kick it right off. And there's a lot that's been happening, especially over the weekend. A lot of news and unfortunate, sad news. We had some passing of some greats over the weekend in basketball. And to one of those, we woke up this morning, which is John Thompson, previous coach for Georgetown, and just learning about him, who he was, and the influence he had in just not only in college, but in the NBA and with many others. It's just amazing the impact that he had, and me learning of that. I didn't grow up in that era, and I know Ed, really close mentor of yours. So I'll open it up with Ed and having you share a little bit about that and some of your fondest moments.
Yeah, Joe, just waking up this morning and looking at Twitter, and that's the headline story that John Thompson passed away at age 78, just absolutely just crushed me. I worked with John for so many years back home in D.C. On the John Thompson Show back on Sports Talk 980. I was his remote engineer, which means every time we did a remote broadcast or we did a show from somewhere, I would set up the equipment for him and Rick Doc Walker and Smoke and Al Coke. And it was those three gentlemen. It was myself. We'd set up equipment. We go to restaurants or we travel. So many fond memories of being with John Thompson. Keith, I don't know if you ever went to the Michael Jordan Flight School when he had those out in Las Vegas. Did you ever go to any of those? So MJ would have these tournaments out in Las Vegas, and it would be set up similar to what you experienced down in Orlando in the bubble, where we'd be in a ballroom, and they'd have courts set up, and they'd play basketball with all these famous athletes, these basketball players, and we'd be out there. We'd have a table set up pretty much right off one of the courts, and John and Rick and Al would do the show, and we'd have players come by. MJ would come by. We'd interview him. Jim Gray was there for pretty much every one of those flight schools, so we'd interview him and other media personalities that would come out and cover this tournament. It was just an amazing experience to be with John, and even more vivid than that, we did an interview with the late Red Auerbach at his condominium in downtown D.C., and John and I were there. I set up the equipment, obviously, for John and Coach Auerbach. And just being in that room with those two power players, those two powerful men, and the fact that Red Auerbach drafted John Thompson, and the fact that John is interviewing his former head coach, a guy that he won 2 world championships with, and I'm in the same room with these two men, I was like having an out-of-body experience. I'm like, am I really here? Is this really happening to me? But just that, and also, Keith, I'm sure I don't know if we probably didn't run into each other when John and I did an interview with AI down in Philadelphia when AI was with the Sixers and he was at the height of his popularity and he had the Sixers rolling. Then we had a ballroom at a hotel there, an entire big ballroom just for John to interview AI, and Stephen A was in the building. Stephen A's, a Philly guy too, but just those vivid memories of being with John and all the post-show meetings we'd have with John and Doc and Al, and him loving sausage sandwiches. John always loved sausage sandwiches. So every time we did a show, like whether it's at the studio or on remote, we'd have to have food delivered, and John would have to have his sausage sandwiches. So whenever the food was delivered, nobody messed with John's sausage sandwiches because we knew it was for Big John. We didn't mess with that. All the other free food was fair game for us. But those sausage sandwiches, we took them straight to John. We did not mess around with that because we didn't want to get the wrath of John Thompson. But the influence that he had on me and developing me into the man that I am today, he's a father figure to me. He's a dad to me. And I'm still processing this, and it's still I don't know, guys. It's still hitting me hard to my heart that I lost my dad. And everything he meant to me and he's done for me, and all the talks he had with me and all the MFs he called me. When John called you an MF, that was a term of endearment. You knew you were in on his circle. So he called me an MF so many times. I thought that was like a middle name or another surname for me. But John, I miss him so much, and it hits me so hard to the heart that we lost Big John, and I love him so much. I'm sorry to take so much time, but those are just some memories that I had of John.
Let me just say, I'm a little jealous knowing that you got to spend a lot of time with him because, I remember, this is crazy, when Patrick Ewing was a freshman, it was one of those things where I was a little kid, mom and dad was upstairs asleep. I sneaked downstairs to turn on the TV on a school night, and I turn on, that's like the first college basketball game I watched. And after that, I became like a diehard Hoyers fan, to a point where this kid from Philly, and you're from this area, it's like when Georgetown lost to Villanova, I cried. And it was because of Georgetown was like, I didn't know Georgetown was an elite university. All I know is I saw this man, this huge figure who had all these guys and they all listened to him. You know what I mean? And he was like the guy. Now, you fast forward to, I want to say, maybe 9 years ago. I was covering the East Regional, or either the East or the South Regional, and it was Kentucky. It's when Kentucky won a national championship with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Anthony Davis, and it was in Atlanta. Now, I met Barkley, I met AI, all these other guys. I was never starstruck. Well, as I'm walking into the restroom, there's John Thompson. And I'm like, wow, John Thompson. So I look at him, and he could tell that I was like, oh my God, that's John Thompson. So he spoke to me. And I was like, hi, right? And it was like, I was just two dudes going into the bathroom. You ain't trying to be speaking, right? But it was like, to me, it was like, hey, that was my idol, and then you hear stuff when you go to D.C., you talk to the reporters, you talk to David Aldridge, and you hear how strict he was. But everyone loved him. You know what I mean? And like you said, he called you an MF. That means it was a term of endearment. And it's like today, when he died, when the word came out, I was speechless, man. I couldn't say something. So normally you have words, but I didn't have any words besides rest in peace, with a prayer, an emoji. It's just because he meant so much. And I'll be honest with you, I grew up in Philly, but I literally cried when Villanova won a national championship because, John Thompson wasn't just about Georgetown. I felt like he represented Black America. He gave us all something to strive for. And Georgetown was the team that we all loved, no matter where we lived at. I don't know, Chicago, they might have liked DePaul, but, Georgetown was all that.
First off, you are right. You are 100% right. I grew up loving my DePaul Blue Demons, right? Terry Cummings was my guy. So,
yeah.
So I grew up on that. But this is going to sound really weird. I've never admitted this. When North Carolina beat Georgetown, I was actually really sad. Obviously, being in Chicago, I'm a huge Jordan guy, but that's before Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan. He was just a freshman, North Carolina. But I watched Georgetown because we got their games, and I was a Sleepy Floyd guy. And so I really wanted Georgetown to win that game. And the thing that I remember most, what impressed me more than anything, was Fred Brown throwing a ball to James Worthy at the end of the game, which sealed the deal. And John Thompson hugging him and letting him know it wasn't you. We lost this game. That wasn't it. We lost this game. That just taught me so much character and honor of what a coach and a man is, that they can coach you hard. They can do all that. But when you're the most down, they want to build you the most up. And forever that stuck in my mind. From that day on, I was a John Thompson fan, not a Sleepy Floyd Georgetown fan, but a John Thompson fan. Just by that act, it showed me what type of person he was. And I unlike you gentlemen, I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but to me that said everything. So I think that's my fondest memory ever, watching that at the end of that game.
You're right, Paul. And so many times John would pull me into his office when we're at the radio station, if we're not doing remote, and he would just sit down and we would just talk about life things. He would just ask me how are things going and just kind of pick my brain on how my life is going. And I'm thinking, you're John Thompson. You don't need to ask me how my life is going and kind of give me be a mentor to me and give me life tips and life lessons. But I took it all in stride. And I'm in the room like, I'm really in this office with John Thompson. He and I, a Hall of Fame head coach, the first African-American man to win a national championship. And he's asking me how my life is. And he's giving me pointers and he's taking me under his wing. It was just an incredible relationship I had with John. And I will forever love him and cherish him. I know he's in heaven smiling down on us right now. And he's good right now, but I still miss him so much. And wow, again, I wouldn't be who I am right here, right now, today, have the family and be the husband and father that I am if it were not for John Thompson.
Thank you all for sharing that and your memories and being as close as you were with him and, Keith and Paul, your memories and seeing what you saw during that time. And one of the things when learning and reading about John is, nothing more than this one word to describe him. And the more I hear about him and what your guys are sharing is he was an icon. So, and he's not the only coach that happened to have passed this weekend. Along with that was Coach Lute Olson from University of Arizona. Bear down, being the coach that he was. And he's, like you remember, John, that's the one coach that I remember. And the one for me that how I got into college basketball and the kind of coach and person that he was with his players and those around him and what he meant to basketball, not only to U of A, but to NCAA and to college players. Just, seeing the outpouring of love, not only for John, but also for Lute and what he made Arizona to be, and U of A for being the school that they are and being from such a small town as well. That was also a huge hit for the basketball community.
Okay, so let me go ahead and say this because I'm Sun Devil proud, man. So usually I say to hell with U of A to be 100%. Let's just keep it real. But Lute was special. Lute turned that small non-deodorant wearing city into a college powerhouse. And a lot of folks don't remember, and I see you shaking your head. A lot of people don't remember. Lute was a winner at Iowa when he came down to Tucson. There were people that were wondering why would he leave the Big Ten to go down there. And so what he accomplished was just amazing. First, he convinced kids, and I'm going to respectfully say this. He convinced kids to leave the Phoenix area. We're more of a metropolitan city, to go down to Tucson and play. He had that magic touch. He was a good recruiter, a good coach, all the way around, just a Class A person. And he will definitely be missed because, in all honesty, U of A has not been the same since Lute left. As a Sun Devil, I'm glad they're not the same because they used to give us the business when Lute was there. But he's going to be sorely missed because he was a class guy. A lot of people outside the West Coast don't realize he was just one truly hell of a coach when he got the talent to come to that school in Tucson. Yeah,
I'll echo that, Paul. 4 Final Four appearances, 11 Pac-10 titles, a national championship. He was another pioneer that, like you said, made that Arizona Wildcat program what it was then. And, like you said, it's a shell of what it was then, but the influence he had on the city of Tucson, and like you said, getting these high-profile talents to come down to Tucson, a city that most of those kids would probably never recognize, nor say, do I want to go to Tucson over Phoenix, or do I want to go there over USC or UCLA or any other Pac-10 team? But he lured those guys down there, and they won consistently. That just shows the power and the influence that Lute Olson had when he was the head coach at the University of Arizona. Yeah, rest in peace, Coach Olson. He will definitely be missed just as well as Big John.